yeah, I got this van a few years ago, the year I finished my grad school, and I've been living in the van for most of the year for the last, I guess, 3 years now. Just spending a lot of time in Yosemite and then different places in the summer, and yeah, so it's been
Did you
pretty
buy
much
did
my
you buy it like kitted out and like made and put together, or did you build it out yourself?
yeah, it was mostly built when I got it. So I
Cool.
was like while I was writing my dissertation in grad school, I had like always like a few tabs open looking at like Craigslist and things all over the country, like people that were selling vans. And this one popped up and the guy was selling it for like a really good price at the time, especially with the pandemic and everything going on. And he was in Salt Lake and I was in San Diego. And then I think basically he was selling it for like 20 grand less than, you know, other similar vans. And I told him, I said, well, if you're down, I'll fly there tonight. Or no, the next day I was like, I'll come tomorrow. I was like, I'm in San Diego, but I'll fly there tomorrow and I'll drive it home. If as long as you take it off, Craigslist today. I was like, as long as there's not obviously something wrong, like you lied. And he was a good guy, and yeah.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna ask. Like, have you found out why it was 20 grand cheaper yet?
Yeah, so basically he bought the van and he was living in the van working at a tech company in San Francisco. And he was living in the parking lot of his job. And he was like doing his own thing, just like living in the van, just I don't know, coding in the office, showering in the basement. And then he told me that he was like a celibate coder. He was just gonna like live that life. And then he met the woman, and she had 2 kids already, and they got married, and they moved to Utah. And then he was like, well, now I have this little van. It's not little, it's a ProMaster, but it's like the shorter one. Like obviously a family of 4 is not gonna be able to do anything with this. So it just sat
Definitely
in their
not.
driveway for 6 months, and then he just decided to dump it. So I
Damn,
got
that's
lucky. I
crazy.
refreshed one of my tabs and it popped up, and I called him like 5 minutes after he listed it and
Wow.
picked it up the next
That's
day.
cool, man.
Yeah.
A lot of people have like kind of a weird stigma with like buying used vans that people have lived in before. Like, have you is there any like energetical presence of like him and like weird things that you've noticed about the person that he used to live in there?
No, not really. I mean, he included this like really cool like artwork on a few of the things, like this one that like his
Oh,
I think
cool.
his brother took those pictures, and they're
Okay.
like printed on these aluminum things, and I get tons of compliments like more about that artwork. There's 2 of them in the van than anything else. And I was like, they're like, "Oh, that's so cool. Where'd you get that?" And I was like, "Well, it's the brother of the guy that sold me the van." And yeah, but
Nice.
no, it's actually a small world, because the crazy thing was I was living in San Diego, he was living in Salt Lake, and as it turns out, he graduated from college with my older sister, and they went to like this small Christian college in North Georgia with like 200 people in their graduating class. And we found that out like when I was in like buying the van from him. I was like, "Oh, that's crazy." It's kind of a small
Wow.
world coincidence, but yeah.
That is it. It is a small
Yeah,
world,
like
man.
my
It's
sister
crazy.
and brother-in-law like knew him, but
That's
yeah,
wild. That's wild. It was meant to be. It was meant to be,
exactly.
man. You're meant to be there.
Yeah, no, it's
Hell yeah.
really
So
convenient.
let's talk about your school real quick,
Yeah.
since you kind of briefed over that a little bit. So, what did you study? How long were you in school? And like, are you currently working on your like working in a job that's related to your degree now?
Yeah, so I went to let's see, undergrad in Georgia, where I kind of went to high school in Augusta, Georgia. Then I went to undergrad in Athens at the University of Georgia, and I studied biochemistry there. And I was doing a bunch of research in the summer. I'd go to the medical school and like work in a research lab there. And then yeah, after 4 years of that, I decided I wanted to keep doing research. So I went to get a PhD, and I kind of looked around the country and picked UC San Diego and ended up going there. And yeah, 7 years later, I finished my PhD. Um,
Wow.
and yeah, it's been, I mean, so basically, I remember I was 29 years old when I finished the PhD. And that was the first time in my life that I was not a student. I remember going somewhere and they were like, student discount. And I was like, oh, wait, actually not. Yeah, crazy. For the first time in
Yeah.
29 years. Yeah.
Yeah. How was that for you? Because I know a lot of people like they don't really know what they want to do, and so they just keep going back to school and going back to school, and then they end up either being a teacher or so like how have you kind of like dealt with your identity being removed from being a student now?
I mean, basically, when it comes down to it, I'm psyched. Like,
Cool.
and that's what I say. Like, honestly, that's like the thing that I probably identify with, is just like whatever you do, like do it all the way. like for me in grad school, like I was doing research. I was psyched. I was like going to the lab and working really hard. And year after year I worked on a whole project that failed, and then all these years later I've been there and then starting a new project and just like going after it. And um, which is kind of what I'm doing now, climbing. Like I'm stoked. I'm just like going for it. And yeah, I don't know. It's just like such a exciting life. There's so many things out there to do and just like going all the way. Um, I don't know. Like for me personally, I get so much fulfillment out of that. And there's so many people will say, "Oh, the I don't know, happiness comes from a balanced life," and you know, not black and white thinking. But honestly, I'm pretty happy, and I kind of don't generally do much balance. Like if I'm climbing, I'm like seeing how many times I can climb El Cap in one day. If I'm going to school, I'm like trying to get a PhD. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
yeah. So
Hell
that's
yeah.
that's kind
Did
of
you have that vision for the PhD when you were younger, or did you kind of just like, oh, like, all right, this is what I'm going to do, and it kind of evolved into where you are now?
not when I was really young. I mean, when I was in college, because I think I started working in research, and I just really loved like I just thought it was so cool. I remember being like I really liked school, even when I was in high school or whatever, and then going to college and meeting professors who had spent their whole lives studying, and I'm like, oh, a professor's just the highest level student. Like you can just be a student your whole life and just learn. Like just being able to go out there and like discover things and learn things that no one's even known before, which is what research is at the end of the day. Um, and I'm like, oh, this is cool going to a lecture and learning something that was discovered 50, 100, 500 years ago. But it's even cooler to go to the lab and, find this random thing that no one, only 10 other people in the world care about, if that. But it's, you're the first one to know it. It's really exciting. Um,
Yeah, that's super cool, man.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to harp on this too long. What was your dissertation about?
Yeah. So basically, like all the cells in the body are covered in, if anybody remembers from biology, they're covered in the glycocalyx. So I studied how some of those specific molecules in that glycocalyx um, interact with other cells and how that affects like brain development and neural stem cells and some disorders. And yeah, that's kind of my general audience description, if that
Super
makes sense.
cool.
Yeah.
Did
So
you come to like a kind of a singular conclusion at all?
uh,
Or is it more just like a broad understanding of how things interact with one another?
So yeah, looking at interactions and also like the structures of some of those molecules. Like some of them are really difficult to like see what they really look like. So
Mm,
I did some work with that to like determine the molecular structure, and some other work on how they function in the cells, like growing the cells in a dish and looking at what they do with each other, and even in like an animal, like looking at mouse brains and things like that. So yeah, on
wow.
kind of all the different levels.
That's rad, dude.
Yeah.
Did you like go through school on a scholarship, or do you have like the stereotypical like overwhelming amount of student debt?
Mostly in undergrad. Yeah, I had some scholarships and I worked, like yeah, as a part time and managed to pay for most of that and had a little bit of debt from undergrad, but like paid that off when I was in grad school because I got paid like a stipend as a PhD student. So yeah,
Nice.
I was able to like save, and I mean, I started living really frugally as soon as I pretty much moved to San Diego and lived in student housing. I lived downtown in a cheap apartment, kind of in not the best neighborhood, but was able to save. And yeah,
Where in San Diego? I'm from there.
in Hillcrest.
Hillcrest is nice,
Yeah,
kind
well,
of. I guess
I lived
it
on
depends on where you are.
yeah, I lived on the corner of Ninth Avenue in Washington, and I remember waking up one night. My apartment was on the first floor, and like, what's that smell? And I was talking to my roommate. I was like, I don't know. Did you smell that? Like, I was like, was there like a fire in the back? And they're like, oh no, that's just meth. That's what meth smells
Oh
like,
my
burning. And
god,
I was like, oh okay.
Jesus.
They were just living in
Okay.
the alley. People just getting high in the back alley. So
Wow.
no,
Wow.
it was a different, and we always had to make sure to lock the trash can, otherwise it would be ripped apart. And so it wasn't
Good
it
old
wasn't
San
like one of
Diego.
the
Yeah.
the bougie new condos on like Fifth Avenue or something. It was so
Okay. All right. You're
but
from the hood. I get it.
yeah, well, it
Respect.
was just a few years. I wake up, ditch out, go to school in La Jolla, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Totally.
so
So when did your life trajectory find climbing? Like when did it cross your path?
So so in 2016, so I moved to San Diego in 2014, and in 2016 I went to Yosemite for the first time, and I was just coming up to do some backpacking because when I was younger out in Georgia, I used to go hiking on the Appalachian Trail and do stuff like that. And I was like, okay, so look, there's these awesome mountains, the Sierra Nevada. I'm gonna go explore that. I'm gonna go to Yosemite. So I came up here to go on just a weekend backpack trip, and I saw people climbing these walls, and I saw people racking out gear in the parking lot of Camp 4, and something clicked, and I was like, oh, because I had been scrambling. In the East Coast, you bag a peak. It means you walk up a hill, and oh, you're at the top. And in the Sierra, I had tried doing some peak bagging, but I turned around a couple of times when I was trying to get to the top of something because all of a sudden you're in fourth class terrain. I was like, whoa. And something clicked when I saw these people in the valley with ropes. I was like, oh, yeah, people use ropes on that stuff. So I was like, I need to learn how to do that. So I started asking everyone I knew who was a climber to take me climbing. And yeah, that winter, I managed to talk a couple of friends into taking me out. And yeah, and I think it was the next summer I must have come back to Yosemite, and then I was the one flaking out the rope. And it was really climbing in the Sierra, climbing in Yosemite that made me want to get started. And I'm in Yosemite right now, so yeah, I pretty much can't get enough of this place.
Did you have any specific mentors when you got into climbing, or did you like kind of take that on your own and kind of like bring people along with you at some point?
It was a little bit of both. So in the very beginning, actually there was a guy who worked at UCSD, Stefan, and he was the first one to take me climbing. We went out, I think it was Christmas Day or Christmas weekend. We went to Valley of the Moon in San Diego. We climbed some stuff out there. And I was like my first time ever climbing, I was like leading some bolted 5.7 face climb or something.
That was
And
your first climb
yeah, it was the first
outside?
pitch.
Wow.
First pitch, yeah.
Leading, not top roping.
No, he was like, "Oh, you should just go for it. Here, you tie in, you clip it to the thing, and when you get to the top, I'll pull it
Damn,
tight, and you come,
okay.
some low angle, huge jug haul bolts every 5 feet. I don't know,
Yeah, yeah, still,
but
that's awesome.
yeah, and then I don't remember how many. I went out with him a couple times, and then I discovered Mountain Project. And actually, there were a few people on Mountain Project that were totally willing to go out climbing with a Gumby. And honestly, it was thanks to a couple of them experienced people that would meet me in talk heats, and I figured out there's some popular 5.6 there, and I did that once with someone, and then I started taking out everyone else who I knew who had a climbing harness, who climbed in the gym or whatever, to talk heats. I went and bought a set of used gear off of eBay and started going to talk heats like every other weekend or every weekend, and just taking people up the same 5.6. I was like, this is my route. And I had that thing wired. I haven't climbed it in so many years now, and I can probably still tell you what gear you use at every belay.
Which route was
I
it? Was
think
it
it
the
was
trough?
no, it was it Human Fright or Angel Fright, whichever one is the
Oh, I haven't
5.5 or
even heard of that one.
5.6.
Okay.
Yeah, and I took quite a few like sport climbing like people I knew, because I knew few people who are sport climbers or gym climbers, but they didn't really do the stuff in the valley like what I was trying to do. But I was
Yeah,
like,
so
oh, it's
was
so
that
much
like
fun.
was the valley the motivating factor for your like vision for being a trad climber?
I think it was, yeah, for climbing
Okay.
it all. Um, and yeah, and then Taquits when the weather was right, or Joshua Tree in the winter. And I kind of just did that for a couple years as much as I could. Um, just and then sometimes a couple times a year we drive up to the valley or the east side. I remember a couple weekend trips to Yosemite from San Diego. But like when you're psyched, it was like leave the lab in the middle of the afternoon on Friday, get here at midnight, climb something, epic, some like whatever it is at the time was epic, like after 6 or something, and then maybe do a couple pitches Sunday morning and drive home. Uh, but it was worth it to me because it was like I just like dreamed of it, and I remember, yeah, sitting in lab like waiting for experiments to run, just like looking on Mountain Project or just thinking about, oh man, that's crazy that people do things like climb El Cap. It's like, oh, maybe I'll do something like that someday. Um,
Totally. Yeah, it's all
yeah,
it can be all encompassing. It just like fills the vision full and just like just takes your mind over for sure.
exactly.
Especially if you're the kind of person who's just like all or nothing.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's just like it.
When we start like climbing, They say like, and this is cliche. I've said this a bunch on the podcast, but they say like if you survive your first year of trad climbing, then like you're usually pretty okay afterward. Like,
Yeah.
and usually that's because like once again, like you're taking people out on your own accord. You had a couple days with a mentor. It's like there's a lot of gray area there and a lot of room to make mistakes, and or put ourselves in situations where like if we had fallen, our gear might have not held because we didn't know what we were doing, or it was a bad anchor or whatever. Like, I have my own stories. Like, do you have your own like stories during the first kind of learning segment where you like had some close calls?
I don't know if I ever had like any like close calls that I can think of at those times. I think I got lucky. But also I was always really like cautious, I would say, and like careful. Like, I'd gone out with people and I was always watching what they were doing, and then I'd go back and I had a few books that I got, like John Long's Anchors, or so I had like 3 or 4 of those books, like whatever, all the popular ones. I just got them all. I read them cover to cover. I had sticky notes in them, and I was like thinking about this stuff and thinking critically, and just trying. It's like this cool problem to solve, and to me that's like what the coolest thing about climbing is you walk up and you have yourself, your gear, there's the mountain, get to the top, whether you're repeating a route or whatever. Um, and you just get to solve that problem, whether you're going to free it or not trying to free it, just climb it fast or whatever it is you're trying to do. And that's just such an interesting problem. And yeah, and I guess the more tools you have, the more of a um, intricate solution you're going to come up with. And to me, that's like a big joy of the whole game. So yeah,
Totally. I mean, it sounds, like you're a dedicated student, and it sounds like you just applied all those skills directly to the craft of climbing, right?
yeah, I
I think
definitely
it's like
did.
really easy for a lot of people to get psyched and just like throw themselves at the sport and not necessarily do all the groundwork and become obsessed with, the learning. They're more enthralled or infatuated by the movement and the adventure
Yeah,
and the position. And so I think that's where a lot of the risk comes in. But it sounds like, kind of did it the right way. I would say, if anybody's listening here is like, just, you know, study your craft, be a master of your craft. And that's how you're going to stay safe and avoid all these injuries that we talk about on the
yeah,
show so much.
yeah, yeah, definitely. No, it was yeah, it's exciting at that stage for sure.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have like a specific lesson that like a mentor shared with you that like stuck out in your mind at all? Like anything that you remember from the past?
It was like a couple things. I think one thing is like moving efficiently and moving safely and understanding. Yeah. So I guess what it comes down to is like whenever you want to be safe on the wall, there's only a couple fundamental things you have to remember. And I meet a lot of people who are so concerned with how many lockers they have and how much redundancy they have and how equalized everything is and all of these things that you read about in a AMGA book. And at the end of the day, like you want to be attached to the mountain and you want a safe belay. And if you just think about like, okay, I'm on belay, my gear's good, then I'm attached to the mountain safely. And to think about it practically, like, okay, this carabiner is rated for 25 kilonewtons, and if it's cross-loaded, it's still rated for 8, you know. And if it's open, it's still rated for 7 or something. So it's like, okay, even if it comes open, who cares? I probably don't need a locker. And I don't. What I'm getting at is that you don't want to get tied down in like all of these little things. It's like have a good anchor, have a good belay. Um, like yeah, yeah. I'm trying to remember. There were
Would you argue that part of your attachment to the wall is your hands and your feet?
sometimes. But I mean that's not really like the fundamental of the safety system in climbing though.
You don't think so?
Yeah. It depends on who you're asking and what the circumstance is.
Yeah.
Um
I mean, like for me, I feel like the only way you can get injured climbing is if you come off the wall.
yeah.
And so for me, the first step in safety is to just try not to fall all the time, like
Yeah.
do your best not to fall. And if you are in a situation where like, you're aware of your threshold is getting closer and closer to the point where like, okay, like I could come off now, then it's like, okay, gear's way more serious. Like make sure everything's really locked in.
Yeah.
Like I feel like the attachment to the wall, like physically is like the most important thing for me at least.
Yeah. But also it's really fun to try hard things. And if you want to try hard things, you're going to fall a lot.
That's fair.
So
That's fair.
um yeah, so that's where it comes more important to. And the other thing is like if you place a piece of gear and but you don't want to fall anyway, you're kind of like mentally free soloing, which I think a lot of people do.
Mhm.
Um, then you kind of carried that gear all the way up the mountain for nothing, and then wasted your time placing it, and then wasted your time making your partner belay you. So if you're gonna place a
Yeah,
piece of gear, like trust it, and if you don't think it's good, then place another one to back it up. Like I don't know, like whenever I'm climbing that sling, I do all the time is I'll place two pieces if I'm at a good stance and I think it's going to be a hard sequence, ahead of me.
for sure. No,
Um,
I'm on board with that. What about like, so you guys did NIAD in 5 hours recently, right?
yeah, yesterday,
Yeah,
yeah,
sick. So like you're clearly not stitching it up. There's clearly
yeah.
hella runouts. And so I would say whether you call it mentally or not, like you're free soloing. I would say most of the route. Is that correct?
I would say some of it,
Yeah,
yeah. Like I would say free soloing to me is like you fall, you die, and I would say there's not often during that climb where I think if I fell, I would possibly die, and definitely not often where I would like probably or definitely die. Like almost never. I think there's a few spots where if I fell, I might die, but probably, but most of the time is like there's definitely a lot of time where if I fell, I'd probably get hurt. But
for sure.
I,
And so
yeah,
like if you were to get like traumatically hurt to the point where like climbing would be really hard,
yeah,
is that like another form of death for you, or like would you just be like you'd be prepared to move on and continue your life
bird
in like a
watching.
different direction? Dude's already got it lined
I've already
up.
got it lined up. I've already decided this because the thing about it is I realized one of the biggest gifts that climbing has given me is spending so much time in a place like Yosemite.
Okay.
In a place like the desert, in a place, all these beautiful places. And I live in a van and day after day, most tourists come to the valley, they come for 3 days, they hike the Half Dome, they take some pictures of the waterfalls and awesome. They go home, they tell their, family about it for the rest of their life until they have grandkids. And then they bring them back for another 2 days and then great. But I've been here for, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of days.
Yeah,
And to me, that's such a joy is waking up, having coffee and looking outside the window and being like, oh wait, I'm in Yosemite Valley, like one of the most beautiful places on the planet. And I want to come back here day after day. So I'm like, what's another activity I could do if I didn't have legs? Or, or I don't know, if I was in a wheelchair, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get some good binoculars, learn how to draw. Yeah. Bird
okay,
watching.
sick. He's got it all figured out. I
Yeah.
love
That's it.
it.
That's the sport. And I'd be psyched. And that's the thing. And I'd be really psyched about birds. Yeah. That's what
Yeah,
all comes down to. Like I said, just being
nice,
psyched.
dude. Hell
Yeah.
yeah. No, I like that. I like that mentality. I think, you know, uh, you can't attach too much of your identity to one thing because, like climbing could kill you or climbing could no longer be something you can do anymore. And if you've wrapped up your entire identity into this sport and it's taken away from you, it can be really devastating. So it's important to diversify or at
Yeah.
least have a backup plan.
Definitely. Yeah.
All right, so time management. Are you in school right now or not? I'm sorry, you graduated school. Are you working
Yeah.
right now or not?
So I still work with the research center that I was affiliated with in grad school.
Okay.
Yeah. So I help
What does
them.
that kind of time commitment look like?
So basically, whenever they need help with some papers, I help them with that. So completely
Doesn't
flexible.
sound like very
Yeah,
much.
exactly. Which is the great. Like someone emails you something and says, "Hey, can you like work on this?" And it's like, okay, yeah.
How long do you expect that workload to be like that? Like, do you have like an end goal where you're like, okay, I need to go to work now, or you're just like, I'm riding it out for as long as I can?
I'm kind of writing it out for as long as I can. Yeah, that's
Cool.
like I've managed to find a balance right now where I'm able to live this way. And every season that I start, and not just every season, but every day, I'm like psyched, and I have like things I want to do, and places I want to go, and people I want to see. So as long as I'm psyched, then I'm gonna keep doing it, and if not, then yeah, I'll probably find a job that's more motivating to me than whatever life I'm living now. Because I certainly haven't like counted out. I don't know, working in pharma or biotech or something like that. You know, in whatever position or level, it's like I like my dad. Honestly, he was in the army band when I was a kid. Like he was a trombone player,
Okay.
and then he went to college the same time that I did, and got a degree in chemistry. Actually, he was 1 year behind me, so I used to tutor him in some
Whoa.
classes. and now he works at like a nuclear research site as a chemist. So, someone like that who's had so many distinct chapters in their life, or even Tanner, he was in the Navy and now he's doing this. And, it's like, that's the way life unfolds. And it's like, you meet people, you go places, you do things. And I think if you're inspired and motivated, then you'll always find wherever you are is the right place. It's kind of like some cliche motivational poster BS, but
No, for
it's
sure,
totally
man.
true.
I totally agree with that. I
So
think like like you said from the very beginning, the whole point of life is about being psyched, right?
exactly.
And it's like, if you're not psyched about what you're doing, you need to find out why, and you need to figure out, and psych level doesn't mean like you don't have to have a job. It means doesn't mean you have to be like free time or have tons of money. Like psych is different for everybody. Like for me, psych is running the show and meeting all these cool people and like building a brand. Like that's psych for me, and it's a lot of fucking work, but I love every second of it. And it's like it's about finding what you're passionate about for sure.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, people do what they want to do, It's like,
Well,
which
I think some
no,
people
a lot of people have different,
some
circumstances.
people will just do something they don't want to do and complain about it for their whole life.
Yeah. Yeah, which was where I was actually heading. Because I remember I read Dave McLeod's book 10 and 9 and 10 Climbers is like a popular book he wrote. And one of the things he talked about is people saying, "Oh, I want to climb hard. I want to climb 9A sport. I want to do all these things." He says, but then they have a job that makes them work 60 hours a week and they live somewhere where it rains, all the time, and if you don't have a climbing gym and you don't have sunny crags. He was like, "Well, you want that job, you want that career. If you want to, climb hard, then maybe you would, I don't know, go be broke and work in a cafe and and climb hard. But you want the life you have, if you want to live in a van and, be somewhere different all the time and I don't know, sit here with the fans leaking because it's raining and try to find a different bathroom to use every morning and whatever, but then be able to climb rad walls in Yosemite all the time, then that's what I want. So that's what I'm doing. But if someone wanted to have a house and a family and financial, net and all of these things, then that's a whole different lifestyle. And that, I can't choose those two paths at the same time. So I'm choosing this one because I'm psyched on it. And yeah, maybe there's a point where I'll want to have a house and a family and the financial net and all of that, and I can, choose that path. But yeah, I don't know. This is what I want to do. So this is what I'm doing. Is kind of what it comes down to. Yeah.
Hell yeah, dude. No, yeah, I think it's super important. I think it's important to say too, like there are sacrifices being made. I think it's, I'll use Tanner for example, just like with because he has like this digital presence. Everyone's like, oh, how do you climb so much? Oh, you must be, blah blah blah. It's like there's all these questions people have in their mind. They're like, oh, how do they do it? And it's like, well, they don't, they found a balance where they've lowered their, expenses enough where they don't need a large income to support their life. And then they've got, a van and they live on the road and they make sacrifices in these ways.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's an important narrative to share. Like there are sacrifices to be made if you have this vision of climbing like, climbing like you do.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, that's what it comes. I mean, I meet people all the time at the crag who are like there for the weekend. They're like, "Oh, I'm so jealous that, you're able to climb this many days a week and all this." And I'm like, "Yeah, but you have like a really sweet house and like, 3 kids that are going to go to college." And it's like, that's a whole different thing. Like, are you sure you're jealous of climbing a few extra days a week? Probably if you had to choose your kids and stuff versus like a couple extra days at the crag, you'd probably be happy with the life you have. But you think you want something then other than you do. I guess the grass is greener, what it comes down
It's
to.
greener,
But
and I think I mean, climbing is so glorious. It's adventure, it's exploration, it's freedom,
yeah,
and those things are just I don't know. So it's something that like it's so easy to want those things, and they mean so much, but at the same time, they also, like you said, there are sacrifices to be made. Like there's also value in like for me at least, like having like you said a financial net and like building something that I can fall back on, or for me personally, like building something like a business or building something is something that's super important to me. And so like we all choose our paths. That's cool, man. Really cool. Really psyched that you're living your full life and you're super passionate about what you're doing. It's super important. Um, let's see. Okay, so partners, like you climb. I think climbing a lot is great. I think climbing partners can be an issue in terms, especially once you start climbing really hard. Like, how do you circumnavigate kind of finding partners for the objectives that you're looking for?
Yeah. So it definitely helps if you have like, a short list of like go tos. Like Tanner and I have done a bunch of stuff together, and anytime we're both, free, we're doing what we're doing now, like in the same place, getting after it. But one thing that I've done pretty much since I've had the van is climb with all kinds of different people. Like I've climbed with a bunch of people off a mountain project, or people you meet in parking lot of Camp 4.
How has that gone? Like, I've heard mixed reviews
Well,
on how that's gone.
here's the what I always tell everyone. Like, I want to find a partner, but I want to find a good partner more than I want to go climbing. Because if you just are so desperate to go climbing with a partner that you just like anyone who's willing to climb with you on Saturday, you just go out with them, you may or may not have like a good time. So
So what?
I
How do you? Yeah, how do you filter people?
it depends on the objective, and it depends on the mood that I'm in. Like for me, I say I'm either if I'm not sure about someone, then I'll say, okay, one of two things. We'll go to the crag and I either have a partner or I'm going to be a guide for some cool, probably cool person for a day. So, and if I have to teach them how to belay and just like free solo up everything and like really scarily like, let go at the anchor, like making sure they have their hand on the brake, then I can do that for a few pitches. Like I said, I can just be a guide for a few pitches and hang out and probably they're a cool person and I can teach them something, and teaching is always really rewarding, like sharing that. But I mean, that's only happened a couple times ever where it's like someone where I was like, okay, I thought, I wasn't sure. Cause usually if you talk to someone and they're like, yeah, I've been climbing in Yosemite for 30 years and I've done 15 routes on El Cap. And it's like, okay, I don't really care. Just here's the rope. Let's go. You know, most people, if they have a certain level of experience, it doesn't really matter, what kind of
But
conversation you can
have you
just
had a
trust them.
situation where someone like, oh, I've done this, I'm so good, and then you get to the crag and it's like very clearly that they don't know what they're doing or they're climbing dangerously, and it's like becomes like a very uncomfortable situation super quickly.
No, I don't think I've ever met like a liar on like
Okay,
a
that's good.
partner finder type of thing. I think I've met some people who maybe, yeah, like I said, like I set up and I'm like, yeah, 50-50. Like they're either going to be a good partner or I'm going to be like a guide for a day. Uh, but I don't think I've ever met someone who's like, yeah, just straightforward lied and like fooled me or something. So, and at the end of the day, like also like I was saying about not being so desperate to climb. Like if I'm not in the mood to like maybe be a guide and I don't find someone who I think is like almost guaranteed to be solid, then I just will go for a hike, or I'll go top rope something, by myself, or I'll go whatever. I don't know. I'll find some 5-0 or cool fourth class ridge and go scrambling or whatever. Like, or I'm in the, or I don't know, I'll find a nice coffee shop and I'll read a book. Like, I don't care. That's the thing. Like, there's so many things to do in life, especially when you're in a van in like a beautiful place like Yosemite or Sierra or wherever. Like, I don't need to like go climb with someone who I think seems like a douchebag, like on the internet, at the end of the day.
Totally.
And I think they seem cool and I don't know about their climbing. Like I said, I'll just get to meet them and at least hang out with a new friend or whatever. Whatever happens, happens. And I remember once I met this guy in the parking lot of Camp 4 and he was like, I forget exactly why we picked this route, but he said he was like interested in face climbing and he wasn't much of a crack climber and and I was telling him about this route on Middle Cathedral called Stoner's Highway. And it's like a 510 classic route. I think it's from the 70s. It's like really run out, like I don't know, like huge Middle Cathedral face climbing runouts. And I was like, yeah, if you're down for that, we can go. He was like, yeah, yeah. He's like, I climb 511 face, so 510 shouldn't be that bad. And I said, okay, but if not, like I can also lead the whole route, whatever. So we get up there and he saw the first pitch, he followed it, and he was like, I think I'm fine following today. I was like, okay, cool. So we climbed the whole route. He had a great day, and he might be one of the first 510 climbers to ever come to Yosemite, and their very first route be Stoner's Highway. So,
Wow, sick.
it's just like a kind of as far as 510s go, kind of like a known scary route. So,
Oh, okay.
uh,
Yeah,
yeah, but
that's cool.
That's kind of how the whole partner finder thing goes with the randos. And I met him in just the parking lot of Camp 4. It was like 8 p.m. Actually, I was there early that season, and I remember it was like not a lot of climbers yet. I think it was September, and I drove straight down from Canada like the day before, and I got in late at night after dark, pulled into the meadow. I met some dude who was hanging out there who I didn't know, and we went and did like some single pitch the next day. And then that night, I met that guy who we did Stoner's Highway with. And then a few like a week later, a bunch of friends were here. It was October, and everybody was raging. But yeah,
Would you consider yourself a generally social person?
somewhere in between. Yeah, probably less social. Yeah,
Less social?
yeah,
But the passion for climbing drives you to kind of break out of that a little bit and meet randos?
yeah, yeah. And I mean, I like people, but in limited quantities. Yeah, I would say I'm somebody who's like, yeah, like I can't do like socializing all day every day. I totally burn out. Yeah,
For sure.
so a little
Nice.
bit per day, a little bit per week
Little
is good.
doses,
Little
yeah.
doses. Yeah, that's the one thing I'll take balance in. Yeah.
That's cool though. No, you got a good perspective, man. I think there's a lot of, at least maybe it's just my own personal bias, but I've had kind of poor experiences with like meeting people online for climbing and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's also too, it's like part of the experience for me is like climbing with your homie, like like
Yeah.
having that conversation and that familiarity and like sharing that experience with someone that you know. Um, and it's just like kind of a crapshoot, but I think that also is weighed on too is why I have very limited time to climb. And so like the moments I do have time to go out, like it needs to be extremely like specific and
Yeah.
with a specific person. Whereas like if I woke up every morning, I was like, oh, what am I climbing today? Then like it wouldn't be so important to like, pick these people that I want to climb with.
Yeah. No, that
So that
definitely
makes
changes
sense.
things because, like I said, if you end up realizing like, oh, I'm kind of going to be a guide today, you're probably not gonna be able to get on your project or
Yeah.
whatever. Like, yeah, the one thing you're stoked on, you're gonna have to do another lap on the moderate you've done a bunch of times, and try to help this person get through the day without dying. So
Which is
it's
important too, though. I think it's like on the topic of mentorship, I think the fact that you're open to doing that and you have done that, I think is super good for the community. And I think that person that climbed with you is probably going to remember that for the rest of their life. And who knows, they might be on the show in 5 years and just be like, well, who was your mentor? They're like, oh, there was this guy, in
yeah.
Yosemite.
Exactly. No, that's it. And like I
Yeah,
said, there were a couple of people like that who did the same thing for me in the beginning. So
for sure.
yeah, it's definitely feels good to give back, and it feels good. I talk about being psyched, and like it feels good to share that, and like just being up there and having fun. That's the other thing is climbing is so much fun, and sometimes in the beginning stages it's scary, and you're uncertain if you're doing things right, and you get so concerned with like not dying, little things like that, that
Uh-huh.
you forget that you chose to do this because it's like one of the raddest things you could possibly be doing. And whenever I'm like up on El Cap, like with Tanner, and I'm like climbing some sick, like 510 hand crack, and there's just like thousands of feet of air under you, I'm always hooting and hollering, and I've got like dance music playing in my back pocket. And I'm like, one thing I always say, I'm like, what a life. I'm like, how are we able to do this? Like, if you ever climb El Cap with me, you'll hear me constantly like, what the hell? Like, why? Like, why are we doing this? This is absurd. Like, what a way to live. Just like monkeying up these walls every day. And it's like, and it just brings me so much joy, and then sometimes see like a beginner, climber, and they're like so gripped or concerned. They like don't get that to experience that joy. So if I climb with someone and I can like share that with them, to me that's like one of the most rewarding things. And even 2 days ago I climbed Nutcracker, and there was this guy climbing the last pitch, and we I topped out around the same time, and I was like chatting him, and he was like, oh, what? He was like, oh yeah, I used to live in Georgia, and I'm like, oh, I went to UJ. He was like, I went to UJ, and we were just chit chatting and sitting, on the last pitch, which is a little bit scary. It's kind of slabby. There's some like small holds. But I was just like chit chatting with him like as he was leading, and then I was talking to him on the top, and he was like, dude, thanks so much. He was like, you were like in such a good mood, and he was like, I was like really gripped, and all of a sudden I forgot I was gripped, and I just climbed to the top. And the funny thing about that pitch is it's pretty low angle. Like you can probably like, it's like, but if you get in your head, you're like, oh, I don't know about that gear. I don't know about this. But then it's like, you just get out of your head and you can just climb and enjoy it and look around and be like, whoa, we're above the trees, and there's Half Dome, and there's El Cap, and we're like in one of the most beautiful places in the world. And like, what a joyous experience. Like what a bummer to lose out on that element of climbing because I don't, just because you're uncertain of your situation. And yeah.
I think a lot of that is tied to familiarity and experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you've climbed so much in this area specifically where it's like, it feels like you're walking in your backyard.
Yeah.
Whereas, someone coming out for the first time, maybe it's the first time touching granite. It's like that's when like the sensory overload, right? And there's like risk involved and it's like too much to focus on. But I think there's a trick there. Like there is this level of fun and relaxation and meditation that comes from climbing when you are familiar enough with the terrain where you can just relax and just like enjoy it for what it is. I for sure personally like when I climb, whenever I get to like a good rest, I'll just like, even if it's just like a bomber hand jam, I'll just like stop and like look around and just
Yeah.
like look down and look up and just be like, this is so sick. And just like
That's what it's
laugh at
all
myself
about,
a little
man.
bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like if you don't
totally.
laugh a few times, like while you're out climbing all day, like, I don't know, come on, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, man.
One of my favorite quotes of all time out of the climbing literature is Peter Croft's incredible work of literary excellence, the good, the great, and the awesome, the Eastern Sierra guidebook. And one of the stories I think it's his introduction for Mount Humphreys. He's like one of the great things living in Bishop is the alpenglow on the big peaks like Humphreys and Mount Tom. It's like west of Bishop. He was like, if that doesn't get you psyched, then there's a bowling alley at the end of town and a and a golf course behind the bakery. And like I just that's it. Like, looking up in the mountains and seeing the alpenglow and seeing these things and knowing you can run up them and like live your life that way doesn't get you psyched. Like, I don't know, man. Come
Yeah,
on.
here's the
Yeah.
bowling alley.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Um,
No, that's awesome, man. Yeah, no, it's all about the psyche and the passion. Those mountains are such a playground.
exactly.
Um,
It's just such a privilege to be able to experience that. And like,
100%.
yeah,
Yeah.
it really is. To be able to play in that playground and at all. And especially like what I'm doing like every day. So
If you were to say like, I don't want to like steer this in the wrong direction too much, but like the word privilege, like what would you say the biggest barrier is for people in general in terms of like the sport of climbing in the mountains? Like, is it mental? Is it financial? Is it upbringing? Is it exposure to their community? Like, where do you feel the biggest barrier is for people?
it's probably confidence, a little bit mental, and a little bit maybe just their community. Because I've definitely met people who maybe get into climbing somewhere where gym climbing or sport climbing is popular, and then they come out to California and they're checking out, the valley, and it's just like seems like this big, intimidating, scary thing. Um, which it can be. The walls are big, but you also kind of just have to, if you want to do it. I think it's just possible to do it, to go for it. And I don't know. I hate it when people are like, "Oh, you should just do what I did." But like honestly, what I did, like I started little. I did a bunch of easy stuff and read a bunch of books and learned from as many people who were willing to go out with me for one day or half a day and just kind of made it happen. And thanks to, the people who put those resources out there, and thanks to the people who, showed me, how to lead a pitch. But I think if someone's really inspired and motivated and confident, they can make it happen. But it's definitely intimidating and takes a bit of confidence to like see something like El Cap and say like, let's go climb that. Or to see something like, a single pitch trad route without any bolts on it. Maybe you've only sport climbed and say, oh, I'm going to climb that and I'm going to trust if I fall, I'm not going to, fall 30 meters to my death.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important, like you said, it's like to have the vision, right? And it's like if you have the vision, there are so many resources out there, and like you can take action and find a way to make that vision come to fruition. And you don't, it doesn't need to be like this financial barrier, like you said, you bought used cams. Like
Yeah.
if you can make sacrifices in certain areas to make other areas come true in your life. And I agree. I
Yeah.
think that like there's this argument out there. It's like, oh, climbing's like exclusive to you know people with money or people blah blah blah. And it's like,
Yeah.
I honestly I feel like the culture and the climbing community is actually pretty open. And if anybody's got a vision to climb, like there are so many resources out there for people to go and make that
Oh,
dream come true.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I'll say I'll say exactly, and that's the thing, like, I was in grad school, I wasn't trying to go to REI and spend thousands of dollars on climbing gear, like, which I don't know, some people think is necessary, but I don't know, I found someone I found someone on some Craigslist somewhere, and he sold me, like, 8 cams and, like, 15 nuts and some, like, quick draws with these, like, big fat, like, BD beaners and a bunch of, like, nylon slings, and that was my rack for, like, the first year I climbed, and I think I gave him $120 plus, like, flat rate shipping.
Wow. Were they stolen?
Yeah, that's actually maybe true, but, yeah,
Yeah.
but I got really good at placing nuts because I think it was 6 cams or something, and then I maybe bought a couple more cams, a few more, like, I was like, "Oh, I should get some smaller ones because I only had nuts for the small sizes," so I bought a few, like, old Metolius cams and yeah, yeah, like I said, I don't and then, like, a year later, I was like, "Oh, I should get some more," so I got my second rack, which was from someone on Mountain Project for yeah, same thing. I think my first double rack with everything, I think I added up, my average was, like, less than $20 a cam. They weren't
Dude's just climbing with a full blacklist rack, just all stolen off of Mountain
probably.
Project.
Yeah. But also,
Sorry,
like,
everybody.
they weren't, like, ultralights with, nanowire beaners. They were
Yeah, yeah,
some junky stuff, but I'm still here. I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. In terms of like progression, let's see this. How do I ask this question? Um, in terms of grades and kind of like your style of climbing now, could you just round us out real quick? Because like I usually do research on our guests before they come on the show, and all I could find on you was your mountain project profile,
Okay.
and all it said was leads 513A, follows 513A in both sport and trad. That was it. Like that
Okay.
was all the information I got about you.
Yeah.
And so like, is that still current? Like kind of where are you in the grades? And ultimately the reason I'm asking this question is because I'd like to talk about your progression to where you are now
Yeah.
in terms of like your physicality and ability to climb.
Well, I will say the only 513A that I've actually red pointed was, like, a soft sport climb in Mexico. But I've also never spent more than about 3 or 4 days trying a route.
Okay. Yeah.
And
So are you more of like an on-siter and an adventure climber than you are like a projector?
I think so. And I also I don't yeah, I like doing things that maybe take a couple days, like, that's fun. Like, trying hard is really fun. I've definitely done a lot more of that in the last year than I used to. Um, but for a long time for me, it was just going up and just climbing cool stuff, like, my life goal was to climb, Astroman, and I did that
Mm.
the first fall that I had the van. So, I
Wow.
was like, "Oh, cool, maybe someday I'll do something even harder, I don't know." And now I've, like, on-sighted a bunch of, easier 12s in the valley and stuff, which is cool, but I've honestly maybe red pointed. I usually red point like a letter or two harder than I on site. So I guess that just means that I don't project that much. So that's why on the mountain project thing, I just put 13A for everything because I was like, oh, that's like about as hard as I'll try. Like I'm down to try like something that's hard if it's safe. I'm not gonna try a 13A with the super run out, but I enjoy trying hard, and I also don't mind not sending things. That's the other thing. Like last year there was a route here that I tried a few times, and I went out there for a number of days. And I remember whenever I first went there were like quite a few moves I could hardly do. And then I went out there a few times and I was like flowing. I like one hung it a few times and I had such a good experience on it, just like climbing really well. And then I was climbing out some other stuff and I was like, oh, I should go back to that. But I was like, I had a good time on that though. Like I didn't feel that motivated to go back because on the one hand, I wanted to send it and say like, oh, I sent this thing. But on the other hand, I had fun and like it was cool and I was like climbing other stuff. So I just didn't really care. Like I didn't feel the need to do it I don't know, to say that I did it. And it's just like, yeah, that I'm just like not that, I guess, outcome oriented. It's like I had a good experience and I was happy. And yeah.
And there's also so many climbs. It's like really hard to just to get stuck on one,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it's fun to try hard. So for me, like projecting or whatever, it's just about like tapping into that try hard. So there's more than like, I guess, tapping into the, the success in the end. So if I'm trying hard on some route somewhere, whatever the grade is, there's, there's plenty of 5.9s that are pretty damn hard, so I just don't really care that much about the grades. And the fact I don't know, 25, I'm like, okay, I'm never going to like be an elite level, like, difficulty climber. I'm just like climbing cool stuff, and if it's cool and I get to try hard, then I'm pretty happy. But it's also pretty fun to, I don't know, climb, 1,000, whatever, 3,000 feet of 510 cracks and pull on cams like we do on the nose. So, like, yeah, it's just fun to
How old are
climb.
you now?
I'm 32.
32. Okay,
Yeah.
sick. And then in terms of like getting to where you are now, like what would you attribute, like how fast was your progression? You said you started climbing in 2016. So that's what, 8 years? Like, was it
Yeah.
just like a linear kind of gradual progression, or did you like have a spot where you just like rapidly increased? And if you did, like what did you attribute that kind of progression to? Cause I know you're going to say like, I'm not that hard of a climber, but like this is the majority here. And we're not like, this isn't climbing gold. So like you're a hard climber, I would say
Yeah.
in reference to most people,
Yeah.
especially in Yosemite, like onsighting 12s, that's a big deal. Those are hard routes. And so like kind of talk to us about what your vision was for your progression in terms of where you are now.
Well, like I said in the beginning, my goal was like to like bag a fourth class peak in the Sierra without being scared and like learning how to use a rope. And like, I climbed laps on 5.6s and 5.7s and Talkeets, and I kind of did that for a few years. And then I kind of worked my way up Talkeets Joshua Tree up to like 5.9 or so. And I was stoked. I was like, oh man, I'm like climbing hard, because 5.9's like hard shit. I'm like, yeah, I climbed like the open book and Talkeets and like maybe some 10As, I don't know, Taxman or something in Joshua Tree. And I was like, all right, like, yeah, I'm like doing the hard shit. This is cool, which was cool, because then when I was on the 5.7s, I had this margin, which was awesome. And it's just like confidence inspiring. And I can't, I've climbed Cathedral Peak pretty much every year since I've started climbing, and quite a few years, multiple times, just because I think that's like my favorite rock climb, honestly. It's just like
Oh,
the
cool.
perfect climb. It's beautiful. And that was always my inspiration to do this stuff. So then I kind of didn't really understand like the difficulty aspect of climbing, coming at it from that perspective. And one day, and I guess I had started climbing in the gym like my second year of climbing down in San Diego. And I remember I was climbing in the gym, and I was talking to the guy I was climbing with there, and he was like, yeah, there's that route, that 11A on Talkeets, the Vampire. It's like this famous route. And he was talking about wanting to do it. And I was like, yeah, I saw some people climbing that last weekend. That's so hardcore. Like, that's crazy. And then there was some other dude who was there. I don't even know who it was, just some dude. He was like, you guys should just go do it. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, no, I climbed 10A on a good day. That's 11A. That's like hard. And he was like, but like there's gear and bolts everywhere. If you don't free it, who cares? He was like, if there's a move you can't do, pull on the cam, place another one, and keep climbing. And it just blew my mind. I was like, what? He was like, it's a safe climb. There's cracks, there's bolts. It's a safe climb. Like, who cares? Like, if you climb 5.5, or whatever. He's like, and if you're not psyched, just go down. And I was like, oh, you mean just try it? Just go for it? And he was like, yeah, just so the next day we went up there and we did it. And guess what? We hung on a bunch of pieces. We pulled on a bunch of them, and we climbed the Vampire, and we were like, sick. And then I tried it again like a couple months later, and I tried again, ended up, sending it. So it was completely mental, kind of like I was talking about earlier. It's like this confidence thing, because I could climb 11A. I just didn't know it, because to me mentally, I was like a 5.9 climber. And then I kind of like labeled myself that way. And those guys climbing hard stuff like 5.11, I was like, yeah, I don't know. That's like steep things. Like, you get pumps. I don't know about that. Like, you have to use your arms. And like, I was climbing the routes that are like this, big blocks and ledges. You just mantle again and again, and then you climb a hand crack for 10 feet and you mantle again. So I did that route. Yeah. So I'd say when was that? That was probably about 4 years into my climbing. So I'd say I was a 5.9 climber for about 4 years. And then I became an 11.8 climber one day. Uh, and then I was like, this is cool. So I started dabbling in like that stuff, when it's safe, when it's cracks. And then I had got the van, and I was still kind of like 5.11 ish. And I was like, oh, 512, that's really hard though. Like that's like legit. Like surely, that's not for me. Like that's I don't know, something else. And then, but I like knew people who climbed 512, and I was like, I don't understand that, because all the 12s I'd seen looked scary and hard, and they're really thin with weird gear. And then I got the van, and I drove to this place that people had told me about that I should check out, called Wild Iris in
Oh
Lander,
yeah.
Wyoming,
Mhm.
and it's like sport climbing. And that was like my first time being in a real sport crag. And
Wow.
oh, someone said, "Oh, this is a cool 12A. It has draws already on it. Let's just like try it." And I did it in 2 tries. Or no, it was a
Wow.
12B. It was a
Sick.
12B, and I did it in 2 tries. And I was like, "Oh, well, I guess I'm a 512 climber now. Okay, cool." But also, I realized, oh, well, I guess I'm a sport climber now, because to me, bolted climbs were always like really scary. Like, I climbed in Idlewild and Joshua Tree and Yosemite, and if you see a route with all bolts, like it's either like 513 or like there's bolts every, I don't know, 50 feet. So I was like, no, like I don't want to climb a bolted route. That's so messed up, man. Like the cracks are where it's at. You can place a piece every 3 feet. You're chilling.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then I learned like actual sport climbing, and I went to Tinsley like after that, and I was like, okay, yeah, I guess I climbed 512. um, yeah. And then maybe it took a little bit longer to actually like start like having that confidence on granite, like in the valley and stuff. But yeah, to me it was kind of similar. Yeah, and I've fallen a lot on gear. I've aided a lot on gear. I just like shove my cams in there really deep till my partner's, cussing because they can't come out. But I don't care, because I like trust it. I was like, guess what? If you have to fiddle for an extra 3 seconds, but I'm gonna like know that I'm not gonna fall and get hurt, you're fiddling, buddy. Like,
Totally. No, I agree with that.
yeah, because I've climbed with people where they're all like, I'm like, this is tipped out, this is tipped out. I'm like, bro, half your cams are tipped out. They're like, yeah, but your cams are all stuck. I'm like, yeah, but my cams would all hold a fall. I've never ripped a piece falling. Like, and I'm like, I know people have like ripped a bunch of gear. Yeah, because they're worried that they're not going to get it out. And I'm like, I've also never placed a piece so tight that I've lost it. And if I do lose one someday, well, guess what? All these years of not ripping gear, that like $60 cam was worth it. Like,
Totally.
yeah. So
Totally. No, I mean, it's a lot of great information you just shared. I think the fact of like having that mental barrier of those grades is another, like a one that's really, really true. It's like, it's so easy to just kind of write it off the table and just be like, oh, I can't do that. It's really hard. Like, oh, 511s are too dangerous, especially for trad. It's like, oh, it's too dangerous. And I've been victim to that myself. And I have
it's not
had
dangerous if it's a split or crack.
for
It's
sure.
only
Yeah,
pumpy.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's just been cool. And also like I've climbed the rainbow wall on
Nice.
out here on the original route. And like
Yeah.
I didn't, I followed it for the most part. But I just like was climbing through the moves. I was like, wow, like this is not that hard.
Yeah.
Like, it's like you build it up in your mind as this like crazy thing that's like so crazy. And then you finally, once you get to the route and you're actually touching the holds and you're moving through the moves, it's like, it all comes together. You're like, I fucking get it. Like, wow, like this is so cool. And like, obviously leading is a whole different story, but the realm of possibility like shrunk so much. And it was just like, wow, like this is right there at the out of my reach, rather than just being this thing that like, it could not be possible.
Yeah.
So that's like super important, like you said, just to go for it and like do it safely. Like if there's a crack, just stitch it up, pull on gear,
Yeah.
aid through it. It's like, I think that's something that's really easy to get lost. It's like, oh, it's either onside or die. It's
Yeah.
like, no, like you can aid through, a crux section if you can't get through it. And then usually the crux sections are short. It's like, you've got a whole pitch of 510 and then you got 20 feet of 512. And like, the whole route gets a 512. And so you get scared, but it's like, there's only 20 feet of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's really
It's
cool.
it's that confidence, and that's something that like related to that, I meet a lot of people who are like newer trad climbers, and they like, oh, they climb 512 sport, but they're like climbing 5.7, 5.8 on gear. But the thing about it is 5.7s and 5.8s, usually if you fall, you're gonna like hit a
It's way
ledge
more
or slide down
dangerous.
a
Yeah.
slab and get hurt. And I'm like, no, what you need to do is just go climb like an 11A or like a 510. So just go pick like, I don't know, go climb at the cookie cliff and just like take some zingers and like realize that these things you're placing actually work. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
totally.
you know, there's plenty, and it's just having that confidence.
Sometimes they
Yeah.
break though. Did you hear about my accident?
No.
I broke the eyelet of a wire.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Was it an
the
old one?
nut itself held into the hole in the wall, but the eyelet broke. Um,
Wow.
yeah, I've talked about it at length. I won't go into it too
Okay.
much, but essentially, it was kind of like lower to the ground, like 30 feet from the ground. I like kind of yelled. I think I yelled "take" instead of falling, and so my
Yeah, hard
belayer just
pitch.
like pulled
Yeah.
all the slack out of the system, and then sat back. And then I let go, and so it just like shock loaded the piece. And it was it was like a DMM peanut. It was rated to 5 kilonewtons, but I decimated that thing. It
Huh.
exploded.
Yeah,
So yeah, and that's just a lack of knowledge. Like there was a lot of other factors that went to a lot, like multiple things went wrong to just like go into this one thing that happened. So,
yeah,
um, yeah, it's important to be confident with what you're doing and not, to just go up on the sharp end, not knowing what you're doing and get yourself into a
definitely.
bad situation.
Yeah.
In terms of your relationship with Tanner, so I want to dive into like, I guess the topic of recognition. He's got an Instagram channel. He's like kind of publicly posting, like you guys climb these routes together, right?
Yeah.
A lot of these routes
Yeah.
together. And so like there's a lot of recognition that I think the public sees that Tanner gets, and like, oh, Tanner, Tanner climbed this, Tanner climbed this. The brands are like, oh, Tanner climbed this.
Yeah.
And like, Michael is there, and like, is there a bit like, is there any animosity? Like, and
Okay.
I
Yeah.
don't want to turn this into like, oh, fuck Tanner. Like, that's not
Yeah.
what this is about at all. I just put
Yeah.
myself in your shoes, and I would be like, that's got to be something that he's at least thought about, right? Like, is there like, do you have any aspirations to be, a professional climber? Would you like, more digital recognition, or, anything for your achievements? Like, is that a goal of yours at all?
I mean, honestly, not really. I just like to climb.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think, what Tanner's done is incredible. Actually, it's kind of funny because I had known him for years, and like a couple years ago, we were climbing something, and he was like, "Oh, by the way, I have this other Instagram account." Because I think I had just made my Instagram account that year. I think I made it 2 years ago, like a year after I had the van. Just because a bunch of people were like, "Oh, you're out in the van doing all this cool stuff. You should like post pictures on Instagram." And I was like, "Okay, you're right. Like it's the 2020s. Nobody uses Facebook anymore. I'll get an Instagram." So I got an Instagram and I started posting some pictures, and then like I don't know, a season or two later, Tanner was like, "By the way, I have this other one," because I was just following his like personal account that has his friends from high school and just whatever. And I was like, "Wait, you have an account with like tens of thousands of followers?" And I look, and it's like, and it's all pictures of me. I was like, it's all pictures of us climbing together. And
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, wait, shit! Like all these people have been like seeing all this shit that like we do together."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Yeah, well, I don't know." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "I don't know. It's kind of embarrassing, but I just like started sharing stuff, and like, it kind of picked up." And I was like, "Yeah, that's good for you." And yeah, he's like shared his van builds, and people are stoked on that. And he shared the valley stuff, and people are stoked on that. And yeah, it's just like I think it's cool that he's out there like sharing the stoke. And yeah, I don't, like I said, I made the Instagram account a couple years ago, and I don't know, have like a couple hundred followers, and it's like my friends and family and people from the valley, and yeah, I post on there, but I don't really care if tens of thousands of people see it. And I'm kind of psyched to share the stoke with people at like a campfire in Camp 4, or drinking coffee in the cafeteria, or I don't know, talking shit in the meadow. Like for me, that's like, yeah, and also sharing. So yeah, it's
For
kind
sure.
of,
Yeah,
yeah,
totally. And I don't want it to sound like that's like something that hey man, that's something you should be doing. Like, go do that. Like,
yeah, yeah,
that's not the message at all. I think, everybody has their own vision for what they want to do. And um Instagram's tough. It's a weird space. It's like, it's not for everybody. And it's kind of just like some people stumble upon, I don't know, fame or whatever it
yeah,
is. It's just kind of something that happens. So on the topic of like your objectives with Tanner, the Bakar Urian, am I saying that right?
yeah. The Backer Urian, as in John Backer.
Bakar Urian.
Yeah, John Backer and Dave Urian.
Did you led pitch 2, right?
Hmm.
The infamous 11A pitch.
Yeah.
What was that experience like? Like, cause I read that route and I was just like, wow, that pitch sounds mega. Like,
Yeah.
how was that?
I would say it was like a pinnacle climbing experience.
Oh,
it
sick. Okay.
it was perfect. And I even got off route like way above one of the bolts, and like had to down climb. And the thing about that route is that it's kind of legendary. and it's iconic. And I said, like I said, when I first started climbing, I was climbing in the valley, I was climbing in Yosemite, and I just like knew of routes like that, and that was like definitely one I knew about since I was, running laps on the 5-6. And I was like, oh man, that's crazy. Like I said, I wouldn't even try the safe 11A, much less like the run out 11 plus or whatever. And I was just like, whoa, that's crazy, because Yosemite just has such an incredible history. And, you have figures like John Backer who were just doing groundbreaking things in their day. And, he put up this bold route over 40 years ago now. And the fact that it's just stood there over these decades for people to walk up to and test themselves against is one of the special things about climbing in a historic place like this. And it's a route that I kind of never considered actually doing, just because it seems too legendary, too scary, too this, too that to really do.
Which is totally fair. Yeah.
And yeah, no, it's intimidating. And I think Wolfgang Gulick broke his leg taking some huge fall on it, back in the day. And but Tanner and I, one of our things is like sometimes whenever we get like that earworm and we're like have an idea, we can't like stop thinking about it. And we had talked about it in the past, and he messaged me something about it this summer because I decided to come to the east side and do some climbing in Tuolumne. And he was like, yeah, let's meet up. And he was like, yeah, maybe we can do the back of your area. And I was like, yeah, maybe let's like see how we feel. And we got there and we were having just like a good month, and we climbed a bunch of cool stuff in Tuolumne, and we were like kind of stoked. We're like, okay, let's definitely go for it. So we we went up there and just decided to go for it. And on that particular second pitch, like, man, it's just one thing I've like realized is it's crazy. Like I'm used to like some runouts on some easy climbs and stuff, where you're 20, 30 feet above the bolt. But I've never really experienced like being pumped and like having to figure out like difficult sequences when you're 20 feet,
Yeah.
30 feet above the bolt. Because that pitch, there's one bolt a few feet up that like protects the belay. And then there's 3 more bolts. And I think the whole pitch is 40 meters. So it's more or less 3 bolts and 40 meters of like really sustained. It's one of those pitches where there's only a few moves that are easier than like 10 plus, like, like it's not like you do 2 hard moves and you get a jug. It's kind of like move after move of just like questing up this thing, and there's no chalk on it. It hadn't rained like a couple of days before. So
Jesus Christ.
even though we found out someone did do it the week before, we were like, oh man, why did it rain? Like, what are the odds that like someone was here a week ago?
True onsite.
Now it's all gone. So yeah. But I would just say it was like the pinnacle climbing experience because, I had to like dig deep, like physically, because I was like pumped. I had to like climb technically well because it's really beautiful climbing on small holds where you have to dance and you have to like execute the moves and come up with the sequence, like I said, with no chalk. And then mentally, just like I was so close to bailing at one point when I down climbed like till I was just, I don't know, a few meters above the bolt. And I told Tanner, I was like, I'm jumping. I'm like, no, I can fall safely here. I was like, dude, I don't know, like, fuck it. I was like, I'm so not into this anymore. Like, we were like, thought we were like hardcore coming up here. And I was like, just like having that whole doubt thing. And he was like, nah, dude, like, you got this. He was like, you're solid. Just do it. And I was like, God. I looked up and I was like, because I know once I start questing up, I'm going to be back in that run out and like have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And I just went up there and it was just like one of the best flow states I've ever had climbing, honestly. And it's just beautiful climbing. And, I feel like I was somewhere in between, like having enough margin that I felt like not like I was going to die imminently, but like not having too much margin where it was like chill, like,
okay.
Like
so
I said,
you weren't hooting and hollering and looking around.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
this
No,
is
it's
so
not
amazing.
Not like the 5'10" hand cracks on the top of the nose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome, man. Congrats, dude.
Yeah,
That's
thanks.
a huge achievement, man. That's like, I
was
saw
really cool.
that you guys did that.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that is huge. And what are you like? There's a short list, right? For the people who have successfully done that. What are you, like number 15 or something like that?
I'm sure a lot more people have done it than that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I would say it's not one that like you'll probably have to wait in line for, Yeah.
No, I mean, I've heard that like the ascent list is really short.
Yeah,
Like, of all the people that have successfully climbed that, I think it's like not it's like noticeably short. That's at least what I've read.
yeah, likely, because like I said, I think it's like legendary and it's definitely scary and committing.
Yeah. You
Um,
should find out
but
exactly what number you are and just have it, like, tattooed to your chest or something, like number 25.
yeah,
That
hopefully I'll
would be
keep
sick.
climbing cool things and not have to live on that for the rest of my life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, actually we ran into Tommy Caldwell like the week or a few days after we did it, and it came up
Oh,
that we had
sick.
done it, and he was like, "Well, when I did it, I was sport climbing a bunch, and it wasn't really that exciting because I don't know, he was probably sport climbing like 515, you know."
That's what he
So like I
said?
said, if you have too much margin, it's probably not that much fun. So I'm kind of glad
I
that
don't
we did
know.
it.
That
Like,
sounds like a douchey thing to say. What the
yeah,
hell?
no, but it makes sense because if I climb a 5'7" where the bolts are 50 feet apart, I don't really think about it.
Well,
You
still
know?
though, it's just like, "Oh, I climb hard. It was easy." It's like,
Yeah,
"Come
no,
on, dude.
no, but
God
and I can
bless."
totally see that though. You know, if you have so much margin,
Yeah.
like, and the whole legend of that
I
route is
know,
that
but
it's
to two
scary.
two dudes who just climbed it, I'm like so
Yeah,
psyched,
no,
and you're just like,
that's not how it came off at all.
Okay,
Yeah, it
okay.
was
All
more
right.
just normal, casual talk. Yeah,
Got it, got it, got
yeah,
it. Yeah,
yeah,
did you hear about, do you know Brant Heisel? He climbs in the valley all the
yeah,
time, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's like he did the solo speed record of the Salfe,
Oh, yeah, last year.
and then Alex Honnold came and just, like, crushed it, like, 2 weeks later.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I felt like that was a dick move. Um,
Yeah,
I
maybe.
felt like that was a dick move. I was just like, he wasn't even speed soloing. Like, he just, like, got off his couch in Vegas and drove out there and just shut this guy's record down because he could.
Yeah, and I saw the way Alex did it, and he didn't even give it like full effort.
No, he
No,
just went
because
up I mean, he beat his time by, like, 10 hours. It's like,
yeah,
okay,
but
like,
Alex could have gone way
I
faster
know,
if he wanted to.
exactly,
So
but
he
it's
was like,
Alex.
"I'll
It's
just do like
Alex.
a normal day out and just like demolish your time, and then like not even care." Like so.
I
So
know.
I would say there's probably a lot of people who could beat Alex's record still, and then Alex would still come back. Maybe he didn't set it too low because he wants people to, he wants to be able to go back and forth.
Yeah, yeah.
Because if he just
I don't
did
know.
like
Just
max effort, like no one would ever beat it. So
yeah. I just
he
like
wants
let
us to
Brant have
try.
the limelight for like fucking more than 2 weeks, man.
Yeah, yeah.
It's crazy. In terms of like your personal objectives and your like inspiration now, like what's got you psyched?
So I mean, right now, obviously, Tanner and I are in the middle of like building up to try to do this triple link up in the valley. So just running laps on these walls is like so much fun. Um, and yeah, like yesterday we set our best time, like doing the nose in 5 hours, and we started really early because it's hot. But then like we topped out at 8 o'clock in the morning, and like that just feels like such like a ridiculous thing, and it's like so much fun just to like be at the top of El Cap. We were walking down and Tanner was like, "What are you doing today?" And I was like, "Well, my plan was to climb El Cap, but
Yeah.
you're right, it's 9 a.m. and we're back at the van, and I don't really know what I'm gonna do today. I guess go swimming and send some emails." But yeah, like it's like so much fun, but also I kind of like really enjoy free climbing hard stuff, like I was saying, like trying hard. And I a little bit feel like speed climbing is kind of how do I say it? It's like it's not satisfying in the same way as like trying a hard free
Mhm.
pitch.
Okay.
Um it's kind of like eating potato chips. Like it's really tasty, but like at the end of the day, you're still kind of hungry for some protein, you know? So
Okay,
like
that's fair. I like the
yeah,
analogy.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like fun and it tastes good and it's like a great joy, but yeah, I don't know, pulling on cams like sometimes it's nice to like fall on them instead. So I'm super psyched for like trying hard on granite crack is like I love it so much. So I've got a few things in the valley I've tried that I'll probably try some more. And just try and like I said from when I first started climbing, just like finding something hard and just go try it. Why not? So I don't know, maybe I'll go try some free routes in El Cap or yeah, kind of. So probably we'll do some more speed climbing, like maybe the triple, maybe do a few more stuff like that, and then but definitely hope to get some free climbing in, especially when the temps come down a bit, because October's good wall climbing weather usually, but like for free climbing, it can be a bit hot. So it'll be nice if we finish like this chapter of the season up and then temps come down and we can like, yeah, pull on some stuff with our fingers.
Do you have a specific goal in mind, like a specific route?
I've got a few things, but I don't really like to pre-spray.
Okay, all right. I won't.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no.
I won't. I won't dig into it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely, yeah, single pitch stuff, and
Freeze spray.
I don't know,
I've
I
never
don't
heard of
know.
that. That's
Yeah.
funny. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe
Uh,
it'll change. It depends on the partners and the weather, I guess, yeah.
okay,
So,
that's fair.
like,
Hell yeah.
yeah, like hard cracks in the valley and maybe some
Okay.
walls. So, yeah, definitely on El Cap,
Um,
like, free con on El Cap is really fun.
okay, sick.
Yeah.
What about like international travel? Do you have like any passion for like high alpine objectives in Patagonia or up in Canada or the Alps?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because I keep going to different places, like, climbing, like, not I've never been to Patagonia, and I definitely wanna go someday, um, but I've been to, like, the Bugaboos in Canada, which is, like, a bit more alpine than California. Like, I've climbed in Chamonix. I was out there this summer a little bit.
Cool.
Um, but every time I'm, like, there for a little bit, I'm like, "Man, I can't wait to get back to the valley." Like, this place is a vortex, and I'm just fully obsessed right now. And I have been since I first started climbing, and I'm still, yeah, I have been since before I started climbing, and I'm still just completely obsessed.
So I
So
guess you just answered my other question, which is Yosemite worth the hype?
worth the hype.
Yeah, is it worth the hype? Everyone's like Yosemite's like the dream for a climber to be there. It's like sounds like
I
that's
mean,
definitely what you believe.
for
Yeah.
me, but yeah. But the truth is, it sucks. Everyone stay at your own little crag. I don't know.
Yeah,
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 keep
El
bolting
Cap
your choss
sucks.
pile. Surely you can get some more glue and make another couple of roots over there somewhere. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
low key El Cap's not the way.
yeah. Low key, El Cap sucks. Yeah. So
That's funny. Nice, dude. These next few questions, I'm hoping to get some like I don't know, like I don't know, some deeper reflections about climbing in general. It's kind of the first time I've tried some of these questions out, so I just want to roll with them and see
yeah.
how it goes. Like in terms of the sport of climbing itself, what do you think it has taught you about yourself that you might have not learned otherwise?
I think, yeah, that's a good question because I think that we learn so much about ourselves climbing. And one thing, um, actually, yeah, something that I've talked with Tanner about is whenever you put yourself out there, like climbing, you put yourself in this situation where you have to solve the problem. Um, you are like faced with a situation where you actually have to do it. Like I was saying, you have this set of tools, and over your experience of your climbing career, you build like different tools to come up with beautiful solutions to difficult problems. But when you put yourself out there climbing, it's like if you screw up your rappel, you're gonna die. If you build a bad anchor, you're gonna die. If you I don't know, mess up the belay system, you're gonna die. And it's like so infrequently in our lives are we that aware of like the real consequences of our actions. It's it I don't know, it puts you in touch with I don't know, it's just like I guess it's extra motivation to actually solve the problem. Um but that's not a very good answer. But I guess what I'm getting at is that um like in our day-to-day life, it's easy to be comfortable, and it's easy just to be in a pattern where, you can, find other people to solve your problems, and you can kind of shirk the problem solving to other systems. But when you're on a wall and you're over here and your partner's over there and your haul bags are down there and everything's in a knot, and you're tired and you're dehydrated and you're frustrated, and you've been in the sun all day, you have to deal with it. And it's like just being able to deal with it, to deal with being uncomfortable, to deal with being uncertain, and to know that like there's no other choice but for you and your partner and your own set of experiences and tools to find a solution is really powerful. Um and being that uncomfortable like so frequently, I think really puts into contrast like how nice the rest of our lives are in like a nice country like, United States or any like Western society, we have, yeah, just such a comfortable lifestyle that it's like, yeah, pretty, it just makes all of our luxuries a little more, it makes us more aware of our luxuries. Yeah. Like, I don't know.
Hell yeah,
Yeah.
dude. Yeah, beautiful. Well said. Beautifully said. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel the same. You come back from, and it's different for each person, right? Like, like as long as you're out there, like trying your hardest and like putting yourself in these uncomfortable situations, when you come back to reality, it's like you have this deeper appreciation for your life and the small things.
Yeah.
Like I remember times like where like you get back to the car and you're just like, I don't know, you're like eating the candy bar and you're just like, this is the fucking
Yeah.
best thing I've ever
Exactly.
had in my life,
Yeah.
It's like the small things. I even we got off the my buddy and I did the Grand Teton. We did Petzold Ridge to
Nice.
Exum, and then we came back car to car in 20
Nice.
hours.
Yeah.
It's like not like anything
It's an epic
recognizable,
day
but
though. Yeah.
fun for us.
Yeah.
It's a big day, yeah. And we got back to the car and like we forgot to have anything in the car. We had no
Oh no.
water, no snacks, no beer,
Yeah.
no food,
Yeah.
nothing. And it was like 2 a.m. And so all the restaurants were closed. And so all we had to do is like we crawled into a gas station and just like microwave these burritos and just like
It was
ate
the
them on the
best
counter.
microwave burrito known
And it
to
was
man.
honestly
Yeah.
so good. Yeah, it was the fucking best meal I've ever
Yeah.
had. It was so
Nice.
good. But yeah, from now on, we always bring what we call the treasure chest. Like we always bring a cooler, throw some stuff in there, and have it in the car. Like even on like an easy multi pitch day, we always have that like fun thing to come back to. Um, nice, dude. I think on the continuing this topic of reflections, you've climbed the Backer Urian, you've done, you've handled the mental side of climbing, like you just talked about being in uncomfortable situations. How do you cope with that mental side of climbing? Like when things get really hard and like dangerous, or you're really uncomfortable because you're dehydrated, you've been in the sun all day. Like, how do you keep that psych high that you talk about in terms of how that motivates you? Like, what's your mental process in terms of doing that?
Well, there's, I guess, a couple parts of that. One part of it is like in the moment, is like when you're there, um, and you run out, or you're just hanging at the belay for however many pitches after you ran out of water in the sun, or you're up there on this peak and the wind is coming and you're just so tired of being in the wind and you're sunburned and you're just like, oh, why did we even decide to do this? And in the moment, lots of times, the only thing you can really do is just bring yourself back to that moment, and it's a bit of a meditative practice. um, and I mean, this has actually been really useful for me on things like like you mentioned, the back of your uh, being run out like that. And it's like you start to think about like the fall, and you start to think about uh you know how run out you are and all of these things. But it's like, well, at the end of the day, it's you with these holds in your fingers and your shoes, and you have to figure out a sequence. And being able to like close out certain parts of your mind to like focus on one problem is kind of a beautiful state. And I think that was part of what made climbing that route really special, was that most of the time that I was leading, I was like in that state of just like fully focused on that like exact thing in that moment. Um, and I do the same thing even if it's a safe route where you're like trying something hard, and it's like you're fully focused on executing that move. I think that's common, whether it's like bouldering in the gym or climbing some huge peak somewhere, is like, you're like, that brings people into climbing, is being able to just like fully focus in that moment. And yeah, kind of take yourself away from all of the other distractions in life.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. Like being present, right? And like that's like you just said, it's like one of the special things about climbing is that it forces us to be present and in the moment. And I think that when we are in those risky situations or uncomfortable situations, like you said, it's easy to like get distracted by those things. But in the end, it's like, well, what we need to do is just like stay focused and stay present. And that's going to be the safest way out and probably the easiest way to cope with everything.
And that's kind of like in the immediate moment. But I mean, something else I do, just talking about like being psyched and having fun, is like I try, even when I'm uncomfortable, to still be psyched and have fun. Like last month, Tanner and I were doing some root and Tuolumne, and it goes up the wall, and we were having fun. And we tried hard on some pitch, and Red pointed it, and we are just like screwing around and doing the top out pitches, and we like I was leading the last couple pitches, and I pulled over this roof, and it's like as soon as I pulled over this roof, it was just like solid, I don't know, 40, 50 mile an hour winds, just like we just seen the forecast. It was beautiful every day. I totally didn't look at the wind forecast for that day, and it was just smashing into the wall, and like I couldn't hear anything, and like it was the kind of wind where it's like blowing your body, or like almost keeping balance on the rock is difficult. And I was just like, oh man, I'm just gonna get up this pitch. And we were hauling a bag, and the hauling was blowing sideways, and I was like, again, I didn't see where the anchor was supposed to be, and I was so confused, and I was climbing this crack, and then I realized I was off route, so I down climbed till I could get some like big enough gear that I was comfortable making an anchor, and I brought him up there, and it was just like relentless. It wasn't gusts, it was just like steady wind, and it's like I was like, this is crazy, this is absurd. Like 30 minutes ago we were like taking red point burns on like the crux pitch, and like now all of a sudden we're up here just like wearing our big puffies like in the sun, like 60-degree day because it's so windy, and we're like, oh man, like this is not really fun anymore. All of a sudden, like, and we're just pulling over the roof onto the slab, and all of a sudden it was just epic. And we were both like, okay, this, like I said, it's all serious, kind of like people on their first trad climb. And then I just started laughing. I'm like, yeah, but dude, look, like this is pretty damn funny because we're up here and everything is epic. And like 30 minutes ago, we were so like chill. And I was like, and in like an hour, we're going to be like hiking down the backside. I'm like, so enjoy like the tension right now. It's like you're watching a scary movie. It's like you hate being scared, but also it's kind of the reason you watch the scary movie. And I'm like, this is it. Like, this is kind of the reason we're out here, because it's like kind of intense. So I was like, enjoy it. And I just remember like doing like we were way off route, and like I like traversed on some knobs with no gear, and I was like kind of laughing. I'm like, oh, this is really funny. And like I like nestled some like micro cams and RPs, and I'm just like giggling like I don't know, and then yeah, sure enough,
yeah,
got back en route, topped out some whatever 5.6 hand crack. And then we're hiking through the forest like 30 minutes later in the sun with our shirts off. Like, oh, dude, that was really funny. I'm like, that is hilarious. Like, we like epic like hell for like an hour. I don't know. Like, to me, that's part of the experience is like, but being able to like realize that in the moment is not so easy. But I really try to. And like, that's one example that I just recently where I remember like I was up there just like, oh, this is really funny. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm psyched. Like, I'm super psyched. Like, we're off route. It's like gnarly wind. Like, we don't even know like if there's a crack somewhere or nowhere, but here we are. Yeah, I don't know.
That's the best way to go about it, because
exactly, that's what it is.
Panic,
it's like,
right?
What else are you gonna do? You gonna be happy or unhappy?
Panic or just like pouting.
You chose to go climbing. You're climbing. You're not climbing the route you wanted to climb. I don't even know if we were climbing any route, but we were climbing. And I don't know. Yes, maybe probably some other sucker's gone over that way, but yeah. I don't know. Yeah, it's like it's just always a joy. Like, yeah, kind of epicing can be like kind of fun. Like if you're like psyched about it, and you're not. And the other thing is like knowing you're not actually in danger. Is like there's a difference between like if we were there and there was like a gnarly storm coming in that was going to kill us, and being there and being like it's a sunny September afternoon, like. If we get back to our van in 1 hour or 3 hours or 5, it's like it doesn't really matter, But
it's good perspective.
It's like, what are the real consequences? I don't know.
Do you like have a vision for how you want to be remembered as a climber? Like, are you trying to leave any sort of a legacy at all, or is this purely just this like a passion like journey of self-discovery?
I'm not trying to leave a legacy. I mean, but I guess, I said I think that I'm really psyched. And I think if I can I think I have been able to share that with a few people. And if I share that with more people between now and when I pick up bird watching, then that would be rad.
Yeah.
And if those people live their lives with a little bit more, finding joy and being able to laugh when they're epicking, light core epicking, or or just find that climbing is a little more fun and a little less serious, then yeah, that would be cool. but that's not really because I will care about how I'm remembered. That's more just because I think that would be cool if I could like make other people's lives better by like being out here just sharing the stoke.
What about like first
So
ascents? Like, do you have a vision for like going out and establishing routes at all?
I think there's potentially going to be some of that.
Cool.
But at the moment I'm just having fun. Yeah, running
Yeah.
laps on the old school routes in the valley.
Nice, dude. Oh,
Yeah. But there's just so much rock out there, so many mountains.
There's so
Yeah.
much. Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool, man. Well, I think a good way, I usually close a show out with just like giving you a chance to leave a message to, the audience, the people that that might be listening to this, the recreational climber that's listening to this. Like, what advice do you have, or like what kind of message do you want to leave with people?
The message is I guess that's the same thing I've been saying the whole time. Just
Yeah,
like be
Stacy.
psyched.
Yeah.
Just like go for it. And like that's it. Just like go for it. Like if you see something and you want to do it and you haven't done it, the only reason you haven't done it is probably because you haven't tried. Or, or if there's something you haven't tried, then the reason you haven't done it is because you haven't tried. It's a circular argument, but like it's like when you're on a route and you're just like losing the stoke and you bail. It's like the reason you bailed is because you chose to bail. If you chose to do one more pitch, you wouldn't have bailed. So stay psyched and go for it.